Wrokdown.
Hi, welcome to Wrokdown. I'm Wendy Stapleton. The Seekers were undeniably Australia's first and biggest musical export. To young families in the 60s, the Seekers represented a wonderful alternative to the sex, drugs and rock and roll scene. But they didn't become famous until they went overseas. It was as if we needed other people to tell us we had a great band. Despite lineup changes with the help of Tom Springfield and his songwriting talents, the Seekers continued to be the perfect vehicle for wholesome songs. They are so loved that they keep reuniting for one last show, and we're honoured to have with us here tonight Keith Potger. Hi Keith, welcome.
Hi Wendy, it's great to be here. And first, may I just say you look gorgeous.
Oh, thank you, so do
Yes.
you. I was actually saying before that you're a bit of a Peter Pan.
Oh, which bit of Peter Pan am I?
We'll talk about that later on.
Yes, that's right.
I've just been listening to your latest album, and before we go into the history of Keith Potger and the Seekers, I'd just like to say the album is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Really, really love the tunes. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. Obviously, the Seekers were formed in, was it 1960?
Well, the first official Seekers were in 62.
62.
1962, but we were four blokes at that stage.
But way before that, you had another band.
Yes, while I was still at school. And that group was called the Trinamics.
And who was in that?
Well, there was two of my school friends, Bob Camfield and Bob Turnbull, were the original members. And then about a year later, a gentleman by the name of Dick Eason joined us. And because the Trinamics were three, Trinamics, we decided that we would change our name. And we called ourselves... No, we called ourselves the Trinamics Plus One.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that was pretty effective, I thought.
So you're from Perth?
Very creative. No, I grew up in Melbourne.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I was born in Ceylon, as it was known then. Sri Lanka now, but came to live in Melbourne when I was coming up 7 years of age.
You studied music at school, or did your family teach?
I did a little bit of school music, but it was never a major aspect of my schooling. I was studying to be a doctor, but it's probably a good thing that I didn't go down that path. I think because I probably would have been struck off. You were talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Well, there's sometimes all those things kind of mingle, don't they? Even with young groups when they're going through.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's right. And so there am I studying to be a doctor, which is what my parents wanted me to be. But then music really started to take over.
Over your life.
Yeah.
How did you meet the other boys?
Well, we were all at school together at Melbourne High School.
Oh, okay.
And it was a school band, and we were all not necessarily in the same class, but we were all in the same year. And Athol Guy was in Melbourne High School, but he was a year ahead of me, and Bruce Woodley was a year behind me. So that's another story because that relates to the Seekers. Whereas the Trinamics, we started off as a group because we wanted to get involved in a charity concert that was being staged by the school to raise funds, and it was a talent quest, and we won that year, which was in 1957.
What style of music were you playing then?
Oh, it was covers of
Pop?
Pop music.
Pop music.
Yeah,
so
that's
it wasn't
right.
in the folk genre at all then?
No.
Am I correct in saying that you worked at the ABC?
I did work at the ABC, and
this is where you got your studio time.
That's where I got the studio time. I knew you were going to drag that out of me, Wendy. But
good.
No, I was working at the ABC as a radio producer, and working with some wonderful musicians, Frank Thorne and the ABC band, and vocalists Joan Clark and just Isidore Goodman, the wonderful pianist, and some fantastic people I worked with producing live radio shows for the ABC. Anyway, on Sundays the studio would be vacant, and one of the engineers there was very helpful, and so we would get in and record these clandestine tracks, which were wonderful. But it was through that we actually got our first recording contract with W&G Records.
Is it true that you weren't allowed to have any other job outside the ABC, so you actually superimposed pictures of other people on your...
Yes, on my head.
On your head.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, it was one of the guys from the original, from the four-person lineup of the Seekers, Ken Ray, who stood in for me for those photographs. And in fact, that other shot that shows me wearing spectacles was because we had to have that kind of promotional shot because I was supposed to disguise myself. I mean, how pathetic that was, you know.
To think that you didn't look like you.
That I didn't look
because you had
like
a pair
me.
of glasses on.
I had a pair of glasses
That's
on.
fantastic.
It was crazy, wasn't
That's
it?
fantastic.
How naive and pathetic.
So then Judith joined the band.
Yeah.
Was this a strategic plan, saying that we think for the style of music that we're doing, it would sound really good with a female singer, or
It
was it
a
an
bit of
accident?
each. A bit of each. The guy who left, Ken Ray, a wonderful singer, and he had a very high voice, and so he left the group to get married. There was no dissension or anything like that. He just left to get married. Figured that being in a group was not conducive to marital bliss, and
you had to have a real
the poor
job.
fool. Yes. Anyway, he left, and then rather than replacing him with another bloke, we looked around at who was available or who was singing in Melbourne at that time, and Judy Jarks was the big female star,
yes.
and she, we did approach her and one stage, and she very delicately declined because she was a big star, and we were kind of wannabes, you know. But little Judy Durham was doing the rounds, and she was making a real name for herself with in the trad jazz clubs and things like that, singing with Frank Trainor's band.
Yeah.
And so, as luck would have it, Athol, guy was working at J. Walter Thompson at the time as an account director, and Judith came to work at J. Walter Thompson's as a secretary. And so Athol kind of sidled up to her and said, "How about sitting in with us at the Treble Clef one night, you know, when you're not doing anything else?" And she was still doing her trad stuff on the weekends, like Friday, Saturday type things, and we were just doing the Treble Clef on Monday nights. So she sat in, and it was one of those really lovely casual things where her musicality enabled her to just sort of fit in and make up harmonies, and then we were au fait enough with her sort of music to be able to plunk away when she was doing her gospel songs and things like that with us. So suddenly and completely spontaneously, we had a group together, and those Monday nights at the Treble Clef started to become standing room only type gigs.
We'll take a break and be back soon with Keith Potger.
Wrokdown.
Welcome back to Wrokdown. My special guest is Keith Potger from the Seekers. Keith, we've just been going through your early days in Melbourne and the very, very early beginning, I guess you could say, the beginning of the Seekers, as we know the Seekers, with Judith Durham. You were signed up definitely then to a record label here, was it?
Yes, W&G Records in those days, yes. And we put out an album, and we also did quite a lot of backing singing for various artists like Frankie Davidson and Adrian Usher.
Whose idea was it to go to England?
That was a lucky chance as well, because of the advertising connection that Athol and Bruce had. They were both in advertising at that stage, and they were working for an advertising agency who had the account of the Sitmar shipping line.
Okay.
And so we started in a small way, just doing some cruises for the Sitmar line around the South Pacific, in places like Suva and Tonga and that sort of thing.
Oh, so it wasn't a sort of deliberate...
No, we didn't go straight over there. No, it started in that smaller way because we just had that wonderful fortune to be doing these short cruises, you know, like 10-day, 2-week type cruises around those gorgeous areas, and we were playing on the ship. And so we were able to sort of cut our seafaring teeth, if that's not mixing metaphors, into ready for the bigger trip. Because Sitmar said, well, what about the idea of you playing on board one of the ships going to London, which was a 5-week cruise in those days. Anyway, the aforementioned W&G album we had sent across to an agency in London that Horry Dargy had told us about. Horry Dargy, I'm bringing up some wonderful names. Quintet, yeah. Horry Dargy was just absolutely so helpful. Anyway, he gave us the name of these agents, and we sent this stuff across and some photographs and a little clip of a show that we had done with Graham Kennedy in Melbourne Tonight, 2 songs, and got on board the ship. 5 weeks going across there allowed the agents in England to do a bit of homework, and the guy who was specifically working on our behalf within the agency was a chap by the name of Eddie Jarrett, who was Frank Ifield's agent. So he'd been given the job because anyone Australian, Eddie Jarrett got hold of. So anyway, they'd done a lot of work and they arranged an audition for us. Directly we got off the ship. And we did a television show with Cliff Mitchell-Moore called This Day Tonight, I think. Anyway, the point being that suddenly we were seen by 11 million people, whatever the audience was. I mean, it's mind-boggling stuff.
Yes.
And we were so wet behind the ears anyway, because that's what happens when you go over on a ship. It meant that we were suddenly in front of 11 million people, and we just couldn't imagine this.
How did the connection with Tom Springfield, who is Dusty's brother, who is a prolific songwriter, how did the connection with you guys?
We did this show with Freddie and the Dreamers, where we closed the first half. Freddie and the Dreamers were huge at that time, and they were topping the bill. Well, we did the 2 weeks with them, and then at the end of those 2 weeks, Dusty Springfield was doing a solo concert in Blackpool. And seeing as we had nothing to do, we said, can we get some free tickets to go along and see her? Because she was a goddess to us. Anyway, as luck or bad luck for her turned out, Suzanne Steele, who was also on the bill, developed laryngitis and she had to drop out at the last minute. So the producers of the show, of Dusty's show, said, what are you guys doing on Sunday? Would you like to stand in for Suzanne Steele? So suddenly, within about 4 weeks or 5 weeks of us arriving in England, here we are on the same bill as Dusty Springfield.
A lot of people say, we say, oh, that was luck. And a lot of people say, well, it's not luck, it's talent and hard work.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got to have the talent to get in there in the first place. Yeah. But sometimes you are just in the right place at the right time. There is such a thing as luck, isn't there?
Yeah, how lucky was that? There we were.
So then you met Tom.
Well, actually, after that, Eddie Jarrett, our agent, he became our agent full-time then, and he thought that the same as we were thinking, that Tom was writing all these wonderful songs for the Springfields, etc., and he got in touch with Tom and said, look, this is the group, and Dusty had already told Tom about us anyway. And so it was kind of a pincer movement, and we were very lucky. Then Tom just happened to have a piece of music lying around that he had not written any lyric to, and so he listened to our W&G album and he came up with the lyric for I'll Never Find Another You, and played it to us with his little guitar, and we said, fantastic.
That's it. With charts, you knocked some pretty famous people off.
On one day, we sold over 100,000 copies, and that was fantastic, and the previous days had been 90,000 and 80,000, so it was building up like that, and that was the time that we managed to stop the Rolling Stones from getting to number one.
We'll take a short break and be back soon.
Wrokdown.
Welcome back. My special guest is Keith Potger, and we are in London at the moment, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
So, okay, you were huge. How long did the band last in England before you actually split up?
Well, we actually started in '63 in Melbourne, and we broke up in '68. So we'd been in England for 4 years when Judith... we all had this little arrangement between the members of the group that if any one of us wanted to leave, we'd give the others 6 months' notice. And Judith felt that she wanted to resume her solo career, so she gave us 6 months' notice and said, look, we'll leave. And at that stage, we thought, rather incorrectly with hindsight, that our career was starting to slip, so we wanted to leave on as high note as we could. And so we said, yes, okay, and we set about trying to get a nice clean break. And as it turns out, the BBC then approached us to do a special. They didn't know that we were breaking up. And then Eddie Jarrett, our agent, brought the BBC execs into his confidence and said, look, the group's going to be breaking up in 6 months' time, and but the BBC said, no, we want to do the show in July. And so we said, okay, well, we'll break up in July. It was one of those situations where, again, that luck or bad luck or whatever it was came into play. And so we did this TV show called Farewell the Seekers, and we actually then made our farewells on that TV show, and the British public, or the public at large, was stunned because
devastated,
they had no
probably,
idea that was happening.
Okay, so now I know that you have a new album out called
Sunday.
Can you tell me about that?
Yes, Sunday is a collection of songs that, as the name Sunday or suggests to a lot of people, that it's kind of a laid-back kind of day in the week, and the songs are relatively gentle. 6 of the songs I co-wrote with Frank Howson. He, a very talented film director and screenplay writer. And he's a poet as well, and he handed me this wonderful sheaf of poems, about 20 or so. And I worked my way through them, and 6 of them are I've put music to, and they're on that Sunday album. And together with some songs that I've just written on my own, and that was released last year in around Australia Day. But prior to that, when the group was getting towards the end of it, doing its last shows in 2004, I got in the studio and recorded my Secrets of the Heart album.
Secrets of the Heart. Mm-hmm. So you have 2 solo albums.
2 solo albums, yeah.
I heard a couple of the tracks of Sunday, and I have to say they're wistful, and whimsical, and absolutely beautiful, and you sing them beautifully.
Thank you.
And I know that at the end of the show, you're going to do a song for us, which is...
You in the Mirror. It's a song that I always do in my solo live performances, so it's a very special song to me, and I hope the audience likes it.
Well, it is a beautiful song, and I'd like to thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
And we're going to hear a song from Keith. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks.
You sit on your step and you wait. You stand in the doorway as I close the gate. Then we dance with the rain sticks that rattle their rhythm. Will rain fall on London tonight? Framed by your wall, the mahogany bureau is home to its own candlelight. Silhouettes guide my hand straight to your sacred land. You sit on the rug at my feet. You open the door and it feels so complete to see you in the mirror and me in your eyes. Drawn by your sweet fragrance, I'm mesmerized. Stripped of pretension, we wear no disguise. And some way, someday, we'll both fly away, fly away. You fire the first shot to warn off the pirates that ply on the South China Sea. I draw the rune of the spirit of wholeness 3 times. What does that bode for me? Curtains that fall like a shower to the floor. Witness our craving for more and more. The tapestry bags open wide, and we share the secrets of all that's inside. And it's you in the mirror and me in your eyes. Drawn by your sweet fragrance, I'm mesmerized. Stripped of pretension, we wear no disguise. And some way, someday, we'll both fly away, fly away. Read me a thesis and all the research that's required by the thesis police. Somehow you crawl through some unspoken tunnels, but come out the end in one piece. Never forget how important you are. Never let anyone hijack your star. I breathe in the shelter of you, in pride and amazement at all that you do. And it's you in the mirror and me in your eyes. Drawn by your sweet fragrance, I'm mesmerized. Stripped of pretension, we wear no disguise. And some way, someday,